hi, I'm Felicia from Affirmative Girls, and I'm here with Ekua Cudjoe. And she's gonna, I don't know if you want to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself. It probably is better coming from you than from me.
Sure, yeah. So yes, my name is Ekua. I'm born and raised here in Toronto, first generation Canadian, proud of my heritage, my mom from Jamaica and dad from Ghana. That's where the name Ekua comes from, as well as the Ghanaian descent. In the city, I'm really passionate about connecting with folks through sport. Started doing sports, I think, since around the age of like about 6 or so. And since then, sport has been a red thread throughout my entire life. And so now, at the current stage of my life, I'm seeing how I love connecting with others, and sport has been a way where it has really allowed me to connect with many people. And most of my relationships are kind of rooted in sport. And so I want to find ways so that others can enjoy the benefits of sport in so many different ways, whether it's connecting with someone, learning about themselves, or even those health benefits that come with it as well. So that's currently my passion, is really embodying sport and sharing my passion with others.
That's good. Thank you. So to start off, I'm just going to ask a few questions. So, how would you encourage someone who is either trying to get back into running or starting out for the first time?
Yeah, so I know sometimes thinking about running itself can be pretty intimidating. And when we think about running, it might go immediately to what are accomplishments for running. So it might be doing a road race, or it might be like running super far or running really long. And for everyone, it kind of it starts with that first step. And it's really firstly thinking about what are your own personal goals and how you can get after that, like bit by bit. One of my track coaches actually gave me this thing with anytime I went into a meet, was to set like a reasonable goal, but then always have my like crazy dream or my stretch goal, like the ultimate goal. So for example, myself this year, my goal was to run a marathon. And last year, my longest run was 13 kilometers. So in my head, I'm like, there's no way I can run a marathon. I'm like, I've only ran 13 kilometers. How am I supposed to do 42? But instead of having it as like 42 as my big goal, it was, okay, how can I start doing running consistently? Because at the time, I might run maybe once or twice a month, and I would do other activities. But to say how, like, to get that connection with running. So back to someone who might be doing running for the very first time, regardless if they've done other sports or not very active at all, it just starts out establishing what is your goal. Is it just to run on a consistent basis? And then what is consistent to you? So is that running once a week? Is it to hit a certain amount of time that you want to run for, or distance? And once you feel like you're comfortable with getting that goal consistently, then you have in your head, what's that stretch goal? So if it's maybe, it's once a week that you want to run, and you're finding that, maybe every other week, every third week, once a month, you got it. That's still a win towards your ultimate goal. And it's just working on that consistency until you can get there.
I know as adults, and I guess you kind of touched upon this, but as adults, it's kind of harder for people to want to, one, join a new group, and then two, meet new people. So I guess, again, you did touch upon the fact that you try and engage people in conversations with talking points, but how do you, if you were to see someone who felt uncomfortable, how would you go about, making them feel welcome in your group?
Yeah, I'm really trying to think about those inclusive elements. So whether it might be sometimes some barriers might be, are you like good enough to do the activity? So whether it is like level of expertise, really try to ensure that everyone participates. So one way that I've done that is for our warm-ups, for example, versus it being me, leading the entire warm-up and say, cool, we're ready to go. I'll actually invite every single person to give a warm-up stretch to do. So it's like, hey, like you actually have an opportunity to lead in this community. Like your voice is important, so you can share what's gonna help you get into this run. And so that's one element where someone might be intimidated at first, but like, I don't know if I don't know my stretch. It's like, it's okay, like just show us one thing and how can we incorporate that into being, a dynamic movement. So we try to do that so we can actually be a little more collaborative in our sessions together. And then secondly, and it's been my thing, I'm like, hope my memory allows me to keep it going, But I personally try to learn everyone's names and pronouns when they show up into the space, and then encourage others to do the same. So we always just kind of go around our group and allow everyone to say their name and their pronouns. So at least we're starting off with the fact that like we see each person that's there and want them to really start off by allowing them to share like who you are and how do you want us to address you as well. It can be pretty difficult, you know, getting further along those ways and trying to backtrack, whether it's, you know, pronouncing someone's name properly or addressing them with the correct pronouns. It's hard when you're already deep, like, you know, maybe you've seen them 5 times. You're like, how do I actually ask you this now? I know things about you, but I don't even know your name or how to say it properly or pronouns. So we're trying to establish that from the beginning, knowing that, of course, we have a lot to learn from each other in so many different ways, but being open right off the top, saying, hey, like, let us know what your goals are, like, what are you trying to get after, and kind of how we can be together in that.
Wow. I think, I mean, the effort counts. It's hard to remember people's names, but at least, you know, just even asking. I feel like most people even just appreciate being asked their name and their pronoun now, which is, you know, that's all the effort does really count on that. So, with Soulful Runs and other run groups you're part of, you have created a space that is catered to all members of the Black community, and they enforce that bigoted mindsets are not tolerated at all. Running while Black is also something we unfortunately have to take into account. And do you have any advice for people who fear they might run into any troubles while they're on a run, either by themselves or with the group?
Yeah, I think one thing that can be pretty difficult, I'll start with the first part of that question and just thinking about the community really being inclusive of the entire Black community. I think that we're at this point within the Black community itself where even just depending on your heritage or your family, where certain conversations may or may not have happened. Yeah. But at this point in society, like we need to start having that conversation a lot more. And so really wanted to make sure that like for our space and designate that way where, you know I have a lot to learn and everyone is growing together, but want to ensure that we are being inclusive in all ways possible. And that if there is ever a situation where someone feels uncomfortable, that we will protect them. It's not being like, oh, well, this happened, you know, how can we move from it? It's like, no, how do we all learn from this and how do we make sure that it does not happen? Yeah. And that we want to address that right from the beginning. You know, there are so many negative experience that people have, and really want to hope that we can start to reduce that in general. But for our space itself, we want to keep on that positive note and say, how can we be inclusive and how can we make the community important for every single individual, which is kind of why the name came about, Soulful. I know people say, like, I like a little play on words, but when we say soul, of course, movement of the sole of the foot, but also think about the individual in a collective, so soul and then full together. So that's really our perspective, is how do we actually learn about individuals in the Black community, then how we can move together. For the second half, repeat it, sorry, one more time.
The back more of like, you know, I guess when you're running in public and you're a Black person, say even at night, you might, you know, run into any issues or be afraid of running into issues. So do you have any advice or have you dealt with anything like that yourself?
Yeah, so personally, I've had experiences where I was taken back a lot, just thinking like, why is this weird? Like, why is it me going for a run is weird or like unheard of, or even just sometimes prohibited. For part of my time, so when I was in university, I actually lived downtown, and I lived a couple of times off of side streets that were populated by mainly white folks. And a lot of times when I go out for runs, I felt like I had to make it evident that I was going for a run. Yeah. So like making sure I was like fully kitted in running gear and like have my phone with my music and like look like I'm really powering through on a workout versus just casually going for a jog in like sweats. Yeah. Because in myself, I'm like, what is that perception? And I had to kind of like unlearn that, because I realized like no one in my neighborhood should be judging. Like I'm actually trying to do something good for myself right now. Yeah. And so their perception of me shouldn't negate that. But unfortunately, that is the case so many times. And I think like one piece of advice is for many things in our life is try not to make one situation negate your entire experience. I've had at times, for example, on one of our group runs, and we had been going for a run and we passed by two white women who literally yelled at our group and says, "Hey, who are you running from?" and started laughing. And at that time, I think I was the only person who heard that, and our group was kind of spaced out. And so I heard that, and immediately I was like upset, and I was like, I can't believe this happened. But rather than sharing that with every single person on the run, I said, let me keep that to myself, because I don't want to all of a sudden let those two people ruin the experience for the whole group, who, like, on that time we went for our longest run together, and it was a 6-kilometer run. And so it was for myself, like, yes, there will be instances that will be negative, and it's how do we actually get through that? How do we talk about those moments? How do we learn from them, but not necessarily always internalize it, so that now has negative effects going into the future. And it's also thinking about, you know, if you are in those experiences, share how you can make a difference with others. So it might be, you know, you might be running, and running alone might not feel comfortable. Have a friend who runs with you. Let someone know that you are also going on that journey, and they can do it with you, or just be there to support you along the way. Because we are in a space where we're kind of at an inflection point, but it's just those steps to say, how can I do something that's going to benefit me versus others negating what my experience looks like.
So to conclude, I was wondering if you have any words of wisdom for Black folks who are looking to start a run collective in their respective cities and communities.
For sure. I think the biggest thing is to start with purpose or passion. Not every run group or run community offers the same thing, and that's what's so amazing about having so many different groups, because you'll get something, you'll benefit in different ways from each of those groups. So, and what many people resonate with is whatever your purpose is and what you're offering to that community. So I think that's the greatest place to start. Of course, you can just get people together and run, but how are you going to go that next step? Whether you get to run, to get fast, to run further, just simply be together to celebrate, however that is, start there. And then, you know, folks who relate with you will show up. And the biggest thing that can be tough at times, but is adding in those elements of trying to be as consistent as you can. Personally, I'll share that when I first started the community group and did physical runs, I didn't always have people showing up to every single session. Sometimes I'd show up and just me, but I said that, you know, the space itself, as long as I'm consistent, there will be a space for someone to show up. So I would still run that route. And when people decide to come and to join, that was to them. But really decide on, like, you know, focusing on that purpose, and that's really feel that energy to keep you going on your journey with your run community.
I feel like it's the visibility that's the most important thing. It's just like seeing people, and then you're like, okay, well, you know, I guess I can do that too now. So yeah, I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me and sharing your stories with other people. And I hope that people will, and they should, check out you and your groups. And again, if they want to form their own, they should. And I'll link everything in the post for them to check out. So
thank you so much for having me. This is amazing. And I honestly feel so honored to be able to join your conversation with Affirmative Girls. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. I'm like honored. So thank you.